The little girl giggled as she took her first tiny steps toward the new German shepherd sitting on the grass. Everyone held their breath. The dog, massive, powerful, and still adjusting to his new home, watched her carefully. "Go on, sweetheart," her mother whispered. But when the girl extended her small hands toward him, the dog's eyes changed. His body stiffened. A low growl rumbled in his chest. The air froze. The father shouted, "Stop! Don't move!" But it was too late. What the dog did next left everyone in shock, and moments later the truth behind his reaction would reveal something no one saw coming. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The morning sun poured through the kitchen windows, casting warm golden streaks across the wooden floor. The house buzzed with quiet excitement. After months of hesitation, the family had finally decided to adopt a new dog. The father, Mark, carried a folded leash in his hand, his expression a mix of anticipation and nervousness. "He's not like any other dog," the adoption officer had warned. "He's been through training, obedient, loyal, but a bit guarded." When the car pulled into the driveway, little Emily ran to the window, her tiny hands pressed against the glass. Her laughter echoed through the house. "Daddy's here! And he brought the dog," she squealed, hopping in place. Her mother, Sarah, smiled faintly but couldn't hide the flicker of worry in her eyes. Losing their old retriever months ago had been hard, especially on Emily. Mark opened the car door slowly. Out stepped a large German shepherd, his coat gleaming in the sunlight, eyes sharp yet calm. The name tag read Rex. He sniffed the air cautiously, then turned toward the family standing on the porch. For a moment, silence hung between them, like two worlds studying each other, unsure of what would happen next. Sarah whispered, "He's beautiful." Emily's eyes widened as she clutched her teddy bear tighter. "Can I say hi?" she asked softly. Mark hesitated, glancing down at Rex. The dog's tail gave one careful wag, then stilled. "Let's give him a minute," Mark said gently. Inside, Rex explored the house cautiously, sniffing corners, observing shadows, and pausing near the framed photo of their old dog. It was as if he understood the weight of the space he was now filling. He finally settled near the back door, head resting on his paws, eyes scanning every sound. That night, Emily couldn't stop talking about him. "He looks like he understands everything we say," she whispered to her mother before bed. Sarah smiled, brushing her daughter's hair. "Maybe he does." Outside, under the pale moonlight, Rex lifted his head. His ears twitched toward the soft hum of the neighborhood. For the first time in a long while, he felt safe. But deep inside those intelligent eyes, a hint of old memories still flickered. Memories of commands, chaos, and something he had once protected. At any cost. The next morning dawned bright and peaceful. Sunlight spilled through the living room curtains, dancing across the floor where Rex lay stretched out, his chest rising and falling with slow, steady breaths. The soft jingling of his collar echoed whenever he shifted. From the hallway, tiny footsteps approached, careful, hesitant, curious. Emily peeked around the corner, her wide brown eyes fixed on the new dog who had become the quiet center of their home overnight. She clutched her stuffed bunny to her chest and whispered, "Hi, doggy." Her voice was small, almost trembling with awe. Rex's ears flicked at the sound. His eyes opened, golden and alert, turning slowly toward the little girl. For a moment, they simply stared at each other, child and guardian, two souls who had never met yet somehow recognized something familiar in the other. Emily took one careful step forward. Rex didn't move. His gaze followed her, calm but observant, the way soldiers once watched for signals on the battlefield. She placed her bunny on the floor and crouched down, mimicking his posture. "You're not scary," she said softly. "You're just big." Her giggle filled the quiet room. From the kitchen doorway, Mark watched silently, unsure whether to intervene. He'd read about bonding, how it took time and patience, but something about this moment felt different. It wasn't just curiosity. It was connection. Still, every muscle in his body remained tense, ready to move if things turned the wrong way. Emily tilted her head, studying Rex. "Do you miss someone?" she asked, as if she could sense his silent melancholy. The German shepherd blinked slowly, then lowered his head onto his paws. She giggled again. "It's okay. I miss my old doggy too. She reached out, her tiny fingers brushing the air near his paw, close enough for him to feel her warmth. Rex didn't flinch. Instead, he released a slow breath and rested his muzzle closer to her bunny. Emily's face lit up. Mommy. He likes Mr. Fluffles, she shouted. Sarah rushed in, startled but froze at the sight. The big dog, once cautious and aloof, had let a child into his circle of trust without a sound. Mark exhaled a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Looks like she's already tamed him, he murmured with a smile. Emily clapped her hands. Can we play outside later? She asked eagerly. Sarah hesitated, but when Rex lifted his head and gave a single calm bark, as if agreeing, the mother smiled faintly. Maybe, she said. What no one knew was that this innocent bond, forged in morning sunlight, would soon be tested in ways none of them could imagine. Days passed, and Rex settled into the rhythm of the household, but something about him remained distant. He was loyal, obedient, gentle around Emily, but his alertness never faded. Every sound made his ears twitch, every sudden movement drew his gaze. It was as if his mind was always elsewhere, caught between the safety of home and the ghosts of a world only he remembered. One evening, as the family sat in the living room, Emily played with her building blocks while Rex lay near her feet. Everything was calm, until the faint sound of fireworks cracked in the distance. In an instant, Rex's head snapped up. His body stiffened. A low growl rumbled deep in his chest. Emily froze, staring at him with wide eyes. Rex? Mark said softly, lowering his voice. But the dog's breathing quickened, his muscles coiled tight. He wasn't looking at the family anymore. He was looking through them, seeing something none of them could. His ears flattened as another pop echoed. Then suddenly he barked, a loud, sharp warning that made Emily flinch and drop her toy. Sarah rushed forward. Mark, what's wrong with him? She asked, panic rising in her voice. Mark crouched beside the dog, gently placing a hand on his collar. Easy, boy. It's okay. You're safe. But Rex's gaze darted to the window, to the shadows outside, scanning as if expecting a threat. Only after several long seconds did his breathing slow. He licked his lips, trembled once, and lay down again, head low, eyes still alert. Emily crept closer, her voice barely a whisper. Did I do something bad? Mark shook his head, pulling her close. No, sweetheart, he just got scared. But deep inside, Mark knew it wasn't fear. It was instinct, an old reflex from a life before them. A life where loud sounds meant danger and stillness meant survival. Later that night, while the family slept, Rex stood by the window, staring into the darkness. A passing car's headlights swept across his face, revealing scars hidden beneath his fur. He didn't whimper or bark. He simply watched, his posture disciplined, his expression unreadable. Outside, the world was peaceful. Inside, the dog remained a silent soldier, guarding those who had no idea what he had once endured. And though Emily's laughter filled the house by day, the shadows of Rex's past lingered just beneath the surface, waiting for the moment they would resurface again. The following week brought unease to the household. Rex had become more alert than ever, his instincts sharpening with each passing day. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle outside made him rise instantly, tail stiff, eyes fixed. He wasn't aggressive, but he was watchful. Always. Mark began to notice patterns. Rex would patrol the hallway before bedtime, sniff near the windows, and sometimes stand guard at Emily's door for hours, unmoving, his gaze locked on the shadows beyond. Sarah, however, was growing nervous. Mark, she whispered one night, watching from the kitchen window as Rex paced in the backyard. What if he's not okay? What if he's too unpredictable? Her voice trembled slightly. He's gentle with Emily, I know. But sometimes he looks like he's somewhere else, like he's reliving something. Mark sipped his coffee, his brow furrowed. He's a working dog, Sarah. He's wired to protect. Maybe he just needs time. Time, she repeated softly. Or peace. That question lingered in Mark's mind long after she left the room. The next morning, Emily sat on the porch with her crayons, drawing clumsy pictures of herself and Rex under the sun. The dog lay nearby, eyes half closed but alert to every sound. When a delivery truck pulled up, he was instantly on his feet, barking sharply. The delivery man froze mid-step, startled. Rex, no! Mark commanded. The dog stopped but didn't relax. His eyes stayed locked on the man until he drove away. Only then did he sit again, panting, watching the road. Emily reached out and gently touched his paw. "It's okay, Rex, he's a nice man." Rex blinked as though trying to understand her words. Then after a long pause, he lowered his head beside her drawing, resting his muzzle close to the crayon sun. Emily giggled softly, unaware of the tension still lingering in the air. That night, Mark sat alone with the adoption papers spread across the table. The trainer's note echoed in his memory. He has excellent instincts but still shows signs of past trauma. Loud noises, sudden movement, or unfamiliar men may trigger defensive behavior. Mark sighed, running a hand through his hair. He looked toward the living room, where Rex lay near Emily's toys, his chest rising and falling calmly. "You're trying, buddy," Mark whispered. "I see it." But deep down, both he and Sarah knew the truth. Rex wasn't just adjusting. He was preparing for something, for a danger that hadn't yet come. It was a golden afternoon, one of those quiet, gentle days when the world seemed to hold its breath. The garden glowed beneath the sunlight, the air filled with the scent of freshly cut grass and blooming jasmine. Emily sat on the patio steps, humming softly as she arranged her toy tea set. Nearby, Rex lay in the shade, his thick fur glistening, his ears flicking at every rustle of wind. Mark was fixing the fence at the far end of the yard, his hammer striking in steady rhythm, while Sarah stood by the kitchen window, watching her daughter and the dog with cautious warmth. After weeks of tension, the scene felt peaceful, almost healing. "Rex," Emily called, her small voice carrying across the garden. "Come here, boy." Rex lifted his head, studying her. His eyes softened as she giggled and waved her hand. Slowly, he rose to his feet and trotted over, his powerful frame moving with silent grace. Emily's smile widened. "Good boy," she said proudly, patting the ground beside her. She poured imaginary tea into 2 tiny cups, one for herself and one for him. "You can have this one," she said seriously. Rex tilted his head, sniffing the cup before giving a gentle huff as if playing along. Sarah smiled faintly, finally exhaling a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. For the first time, everything felt right. Then Emily stood up and began walking toward the flower bed. A butterfly fluttered near her face and she giggled, chasing after it with delight. Rex followed at a slow pace, his eyes never leaving her. Mark straightened from his work, watching from a distance, hammer still in hand. "Stay where I can see you, sweetheart," he called out. "I'm right here, Daddy," she chirped back, crouching near the flowers. Her laughter echoed, soft and innocent. Rex stopped a few feet behind her, ears perked. Something had shifted in his stance. His tail stiffened, his nose lifted slightly toward the ground. He took a single step forward, eyes narrowing. Sarah noticed it instantly from the window. "Mark," she said, her voice tight. "He's acting strange again." Mark turned, squinting across the yard. Rex's muscles were tense now, his gaze locked on the patch of tall grass behind Emily. His posture had changed, from relaxed companion to alert protector. Mark's grip tightened around the hammer. "Emily," he called, his tone suddenly firm. "Come back here, honey." But Emily only laughed, still chasing the butterfly, unaware of what was hiding just a few feet away, waiting, coiled, and unseen. The sunlight shimmered through the trees, painting golden stripes across the grass. Emily laughed as the butterfly danced just out of reach, her tiny hands stretching toward it. Rex stood several feet behind her, motionless except for the faint quiver in his tail. His breathing slowed. His pupils narrowed. Something was wrong. Mark noticed the change instantly. He dropped his hammer, heart racing. "Emily," he called again, louder this time. But she only giggled, crouching near the flowers. Then Rex moved, not with hesitation but with absolute purpose. His bark exploded across the yard, deep and thunderous, echoing through the still afternoon. Sarah screamed from the window, "Mark!" Before anyone could react, Rex lunged. His body shot forward, a blur of muscle and instinct. Emily turned, startled, just as the dog crashed into her, knocking her backward into the soft grass. The teacup in her hand flew into the air and shattered beside them. Mark sprinted across the yard, his voice breaking. "Rex! No!" He reached them within seconds, heart pounding in his ears. But what he saw froze him in place. Rex wasn't attacking. He was standing over Emily, rigid, growling at something just beyond her. His teeth were bared, hackles raised, eyes locked on a spot in the grass. Sarah ran outside, panic in her face. Oh my God, he hurt her. Wait, Mark interrupted, holding out a hand. He crouched low beside Rex, following the dog's line of sight. And then he saw it, a faint ripple in the grass. A slithering motion. The unmistakable rattle of scales brushing against leaves. A snake. Mark's stomach turned to ice. It was less than a foot from where Emily had been standing. Its body coiled, its head rising, tongue flicking in warning. Get Emily inside, Mark shouted. Rex growled louder, stepping forward, his body shielding the child. Sarah grabbed Emily's arm, but the little girl clung to the dog, crying. No, Rex, she sobbed. Don't hurt him! But Rex didn't hear her. The snake hissed, striking forward, too fast for human reflex. But not for him. With a fierce snarl, Rex lunged. The sound was sharp, violent, final. The snake thrashed once, then went still. Silence fell over the garden. Mark exhaled shakily, realizing he'd been holding his breath. Sarah stood frozen, clutching Emily. Rex remained over the snake's body, chest heaving, eyes burning with primal focus. Emily whispered, trembling. He saved me. Sarah's hand covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Mark looked at Rex, awe replacing fear. Good boy, he breathed. You saved her. But the dog didn't move. He stayed alert, eyes scanning the yard again, because to him the danger wasn't over. It never was. For a long moment, no one moved. The air hung heavy with tension, the grass trembling from the struggle that had just ended. The only sound was the faint hiss of the dying snake and the echo of Emily's frightened sobs. Mark's chest heaved as he knelt beside her, his hand trembling against her back. You're okay, he whispered. You're safe. Rex stood a few feet away, his chest rising and falling with shallow, rapid breaths. His fur was bristled, his eyes still locked on the snake's lifeless body. It wasn't the calm, loyal companion they'd seen before. This was something primal, protective, fierce. Sarah held Emily tightly, tears streaking her face. I thought... Her voice cracked, unable to finish the sentence. Mark reached for Rex's collar cautiously. Easy, boy. It's over, but Rex didn't move. He stood tall, tail stiff, scanning the garden again as though expecting another threat. His entire body screamed vigilance. Only after several long seconds did his posture ease. He turned his head slowly toward Emily, and that's when something extraordinary happened. The massive dog lowered himself gently to the ground, his nose nudging the little girl's trembling hand. His ears flattened, his eyes softening from battle-hardened focus to something heartbreakingly human. Regret. He whined quietly, pressing his forehead against her arm. Emily sniffled and touched his fur with a shaky hand. You were saving me? She whispered. Rex let out a low sound, half growl, half whimper, and licked her palm. It was as if he was apologizing for scaring her while reminding her that she was safe because of him. Sarah covered her mouth, unable to hold back another tear. He protected her, she whispered. Mark nodded slowly, his gaze shifting from the dead snake to the loyal canine before him. He didn't attack her, he said softly. He saved her. Rex lay down beside Emily, resting his head near her feet as if refusing to move until he was sure she was completely out of danger. The child leaned forward, wrapping her tiny arms around his neck. Good boy, she whispered, her voice barely audible. You're my hero. The wind rustled the trees, carrying away the fear that had filled the garden only moments ago. The tension melted into silence, one that held gratitude, awe, and something unspoken. From the porch, Mark watched as Emily clung to Rex's thick fur. The dog didn't move. His eyes, once wild with instinct, now carried a deep calm, a protector's peace. And though none of them realized it yet, that moment wasn't just about survival. It was the beginning of an unbreakable bond, one forged in danger, sealed by trust, and destined to change their lives forever. The garden was silent now, the only movement coming from the wind brushing through the grass. The tension of what had just happened hung thick in the air, every breath heavy with disbelief. Emily sat in her mother's lap on the porch steps, her tiny hands still trembling. Sarah clutched her close, her heartbeat racing against the child's ear. Mark crouched beside the lifeless snake, still processing what he had seen. The snake's scales glistened faintly in the sunlight, its venomous fangs exposed, deadly and real. If Rex hadn't acted when he did, Mark didn't dare finish the thought. He exhaled shakily and turned to where Rex sat a few feet away. The German Shepherd was quiet now, his breathing slow but uneven. Dirt clung to his fur and his muzzle bore a faint scratch from the struggle, yet his eyes remained calm, almost humble, as if he didn't fully understand the magnitude of what he'd done. Sarah's voice broke the silence. "Mark, he saved her, didn't he?" Mark nodded, still staring at Rex. "Yeah," he murmured. "He did." Emily slipped off her mother's lap and walked slowly toward the dog. Her little hands shook, but she pressed forward anyway. "Rex," she whispered. The shepherd raised his head, ears twitching at the sound of her voice. She knelt beside him, her voice soft. "You were brave." Then, with a child's pure sincerity, she wrapped her arms around his neck. Rex froze for a second, then relaxed, his body melting into her embrace. He let out a deep, content sigh, his tail thumping weakly against the ground. The moment was fragile, wordless, and impossibly pure. Sarah wiped her tears, whispering, "I thought he was dangerous, but he was just protecting her." Mark stood, his voice low and reverent. He was trained for it. It's instinct, but it's also heart. He looked toward the setting sun, the light painting their backyard in hues of gold and orange. "We almost lost both of them today," he said quietly. Sarah nodded, her eyes glistening. "And now I see he's not just any dog. He's family." Rex lay beside Emily, head on her lap, his body finally at ease. The danger had passed, but the bond forged in that moment would never fade. For the first time since he'd arrived, the house didn't feel like a place Rex was guarding. It felt like a home he belonged to. The evening breeze carried a soft stillness through the house. After the chaos of the afternoon, the family sat quietly in the living room. Emily was curled up on the couch, her little hands buried in Rex's fur. The dog lay beside her, calm and steady, his eyes half closed but alert, as if keeping watch over her even in rest. Sarah sat across from them, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea she hadn't touched. "I can't stop thinking about it," she whispered. If Rex hadn't reacted when he did, her voice faltered, breaking under the weight of the thought. Mark nodded slowly. "He knew, before any of us did." He stared at Rex, a quiet awe in his eyes. "He didn't just protect her, he predicted it." Sarah glanced at the window, her reflection trembling in the glass. "I was scared of him," she admitted softly. "I thought he might hurt her one day, but he was trying to save her all along." Rex lifted his head at the sound of her voice, his gaze meeting hers for a brief, meaningful moment. There was intelligence there and something deeper. Understanding. Emily stirred and looked up. "Mommy," she said sleepily, "Rex isn't scary anymore. He's my best friend." She pressed her cheek against the dog's neck and Rex exhaled softly, content. Mark smiled faintly. "She's right. He's not scary, he's loyal." He leaned back, remembering the warnings the shelter worker had given him. "He's been through things. Be patient with him." At the time, those words felt like a caution. Now they felt like a promise fulfilled. Sarah set down her cup and approached the couch. She knelt beside Rex, hesitating for a second before reaching out to touch his fur. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice barely a whisper. "For saving her. For proving me wrong." Rex blinked slowly, then rested his head on her knee. The gesture was simple, but it carried the weight of forgiveness. For the first time since he'd arrived, there was no tension in his posture, no fear in their eyes. Only trust. Outside, the night deepened, stars glimmering over the quiet home. Inside, a once fractured family finally found peace, not just because their daughter was safe, but because they had rediscovered something they didn't know they'd lost. Faith in the goodness that still existed in the world. And in one extraordinary dog. That night, as the house settled into quiet darkness, Mark sat alone in the study, Rex lying at his feet. The dog's steady breathing was a reminder of the afternoon's chaos and courage. Mark's mind wandered back to the adoption papers, to the small note left by the shelter trainer. He has been trained for protection, experienced with children. Past trauma may cause alertness to sudden danger. Mark picked up the note again, reading it slowly. Past trauma, he thought. Until now, he had only glimpsed the depth of it. Every flick of Rex's ears, every cautious sniff of the grass, every tense stance was a memory from another life. One filled with danger, responsibility, and unwavering duty. The memory of the trainer's words returned vividly. He was a K-9 in a rescue unit. He's seen things most people never will. Fires, floods, even violent threats. He saved lives before you even knew they were at risk. Mark's fingers traced the edges of the paper, imagining what Rex had endured, what had shaped him into the protective, disciplined dog sitting loyally beside Emily now. Sarah peeked into the study, noticing Mark's intense expression. "What is it?" she asked softly. He looked up at her, eyes wide with realization. "I think I understand him now," he said quietly. "All his caution, all his reactions, he isn't unpredictable. He's experienced. He's seen danger before we even realize it exists." Sarah knelt beside Rex, brushing a hand along his thick fur. "So he's always been this guardian?" she whispered. Rex lifted his head, amber eyes meeting hers as if acknowledging her words. The low whine he released felt like a confirmation, a gentle agreement that he had always carried this weight silently. Mark continued, his voice hushed. "He's been trained to detect threats, to respond before it's too late. That moment with Emily, he wasn't just reacting. He was protecting exactly as he was taught. That's his life's purpose." A soft sigh escaped Sarah. "And we thought he was just distant." Mark shook his head. "We didn't see his heart. We didn't see his loyalty. Every time he scanned the yard, every time he hesitated near shadows, he was remembering, calculating, preparing. For moments like today." Rex shifted slightly, resting his head on Mark's foot, eyes half closed. The tension of the day had faded, but the memory of his past still lingered in his stance. Mark and Sarah finally understood. This was more than a pet. This was a trained protector, a dog who had already saved countless lives in ways most would never know. And now, he had saved theirs. Mark paced slowly in the dim light of the living room, his hands buried deep in his pockets. The events of the afternoon played over and over in his mind. Rex's sudden aggression, the growl, the leap had startled him, had made him question whether adopting the dog had been a mistake. Yet now, with the clarity of hindsight, Mark's chest tightened with regret. He remembered his doubts when they first brought Rex home. "Is he safe?" he had asked the trainer. "Will he adjust?" And the tiny voice inside him had worried constantly about Emily's safety. He thought caution might mean distance, but he had never imagined that the dog's instincts were rooted in care, loyalty, and experience beyond comprehension. Sarah watched silently from the couch, her hand on Emily's back as the little girl played with blocks. Mark finally sank onto the armchair beside her, letting out a heavy sigh. "I thought he might be too unpredictable," he admitted softly, eyes fixed on Rex, who lay at Emily's feet. "I didn't see how much he understands, how much he feels." Rex lifted his head briefly, amber eyes meeting Mark's with a quiet intensity. It was as if he knew, as if he sensed the remorse lingering in the man's heart. Mark's fingers itched to reach out, to touch the dog, to apologize for the doubt he had carried. "I judged him too quickly," Mark whispered. "I forgot that experience, loyalty, and courage aren't always obvious. I forgot that he's not just a pet. He's a protector. And I questioned him. I doubted him." Sarah shifted closer, her voice soft but steady. "He saved Emily because he trusted his instincts, and he's never stopped caring about this family." Mark nodded, swallowing hard. His eyes darted to Emily, laughing softly as she stacked blocks, oblivious to the storm of emotions around her. "I was blind to it," he said. "Blind to how much he's capable of, how much he loves." Rex rose slightly, stretching and shifting closer to Mark, resting his head near the man's leg. The gesture, subtle yet deliberate, filled Mark with a mixture of awe and guilt. "I'm sorry, buddy," Mark murmured, voice breaking. "I should have trusted you from the start. Thank you for saving her, for saving all of us." The dog exhaled a low, content sigh, his body relaxing completely. It was a quiet forgiveness, a silent acknowledgement of trust restored. In that moment, Mark realized the truth. Rex had already taught him the greatest lesson of all. Loyalty and love are actions, not words, and trust is built through experience, not doubt. The morning sunlight filtered gently through the curtains, casting a warm glow over the living room. Emily sat on the couch, her cheeks still rosy from the scare of the day before. Beside her, Rex lay with his massive head resting lightly against her legs, his amber eyes half closed but attentive. The air carried a soft calm, the kind that follows a storm, yet lingered with quiet tension. Emily reached out tentatively, brushing a hand across Rex's fur. The dog responded instantly, lifting his head and nudging her palm with his nose. A small giggle escaped her lips, shaky at first, then stronger as she realized she was safe. "Rex," she whispered softly, "you're my best friend." Mark and Sarah watched from the doorway, smiles tempered with relief. "Look at them," Sarah murmured, her voice filled with awe. "He's been with her all night, hasn't he?" Mark nodded. He stayed right there, watching, protecting. He wouldn't leave her side. He stepped closer and knelt beside Emily. "How are you feeling, Pumpkin?" "I'm okay," Emily said, glancing down at Rex. "I'm okay because of him." She hugged his neck tightly. Rex shifted slightly, laying his head on her shoulder almost as if he understood the magnitude of what she had said. The family spent the morning quietly together, laughter and soft chatter filling the room. Emily's blocks were stacked with careful precision, Rex lying nearby as her silent guardian. Every movement he made was deliberate, protective, yet gentle, reminding everyone that the bond forged through danger was now unbreakable. Sarah finally spoke, her voice soft. "We can't take him for granted anymore. He's not just a pet. He's family." Rex lifted his head at her words and gave a low, approving whine. Emily clapped her hands and leaned back against him. "See, Mommy? He knows." Mark laughed quietly, relief washing over him. "He does, kiddo. He knows exactly what he's doing." Outside, the garden was quiet and sunlit, but within the walls of the house a new energy had settled, a mixture of gratitude, love, and understanding. Rex's watchful eyes, once tense and cautious, now reflected trust and contentment. Emily's laughter and light steps were a reminder that the danger had passed, and that she was in safe, loving hands. That day marked the beginning of something extraordinary, a bond between child and dog that would grow stronger with every passing moment, built on trust, courage, and shared experiences. The days that followed were filled with quiet joy and small routines that strengthened the bond between Emily and Rex. Each morning, she would run to the backyard, her laughter ringing through the air, and Rex would be waiting patiently, tail wagging, alert yet calm. The garden became their world, a safe place for games, exploration, and the kind of trust that grows over shared moments. Emily would often kneel beside him, brushing his thick fur, whispering secrets that only a child and her dog could understand. Rex responded with gentle nudges, soft whines, and the occasional playful bark. It was a dance of understanding, of two beings communicating without words, learning the rhythms of each other's hearts. Mark watched from the porch, sipping his morning coffee. He marveled at how quickly the tension that had once filled the household dissolved into warmth and laughter. Rex, once distant and guarded, now followed Emily's every step with unwavering attentiveness, yet never stifled her freedom. Sarah joined them, carrying a basket of toys and treats. "Look at them," she said softly, her eyes glistening. "It's like they've known each other forever." Emily clapped her hands, running toward the swings with Rex close behind. The dog's paws pounded softly against the grass, a perfect match for her tiny feet. Mark and Sarah exchanged a glance, both relieved and amazed. The bond forged in fear and chaos had transformed into something joyful, unbreakable. Evenings became their quiet ritual. Emily would read aloud to Rex, her small voice telling stories that he seemed to follow with rapt attention. He rested his massive head on her lap, ears flicking occasionally at distant sounds, but always returning to the warmth of her presence. The family slowly noticed subtle changes in Rex. He would greet the neighbors politely, no longer tense at sudden movements. He played gently with Emily, carefully mindful of her fragile frame. His protective instincts remained, but they were now balanced with affection and trust. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, Emily hugged Rex tightly. "You're my best friend forever," she whispered. Rex responded with a soft, low whine, resting his head against her shoulder as if agreeing. Mark and Sarah watched silently, hearts full. They had gained more than a dog. They had found a guardian, a companion, and a new heartbeat in their home. A week later, a familiar car pulled into the driveway. Mark stepped outside, curiosity mixed with apprehension. The driver stepped out, a tall, lean man with a crisp uniform and an air of quiet authority. His eyes scanned the yard, immediately locking onto Rex, who stood alert, ears pricked. "Rex," the man called softly, his voice calm but commanding. The dog's posture shifted instantly, muscles tensing, eyes bright with recognition. Emily ran forward, laughing, unaware of the history about to unfold. The man approached cautiously, kneeling to meet the dog at eye level. "It's been a while, boy," he murmured. Rex sniffed the air, then pressed gently against the trainer's shoulder, letting out a soft whine of acknowledgement. Mark and Sarah exchanged glances. "You know him?" Sarah asked, her voice filled with wonder. The trainer straightened, glancing at the family with a faint smile. "I trained Rex years ago in the rescue unit. He's been through floods, fires, even violent threats. He's one of the most loyal, disciplined dogs I've ever known." Emily's eyes widened. "He did all that?" she whispered. Rex barked softly, nudging her hand. "Yes," the trainer said, crouching beside her. "And it shows. His instincts are sharp because he's saved lives before. What you witnessed in the garden, his reaction, was instinct honed through years of service. He wasn't aggressive. He was protecting." Mark felt a lump in his throat. "We knew he was trained, but we had no idea the extent," the trainer nodded. "Few humans do. He carries his past quietly, but it's there every second. He trusts completely, but he's always prepared. That's why he reacted the way he did. He sensed danger before it reached Emily." Sarah knelt, gently stroking Rex's head. "We owe him so much," she whispered. The trainer smiled, watching the bond between child and dog. "He's remarkable," he said softly. "And he's chosen you as his family. That trust doesn't come easily, and you've earned it." Emily hugged Rex tightly. "You saved me, Rex," she said. The dog rested his head on her shoulder, a quiet affirmation. As the trainer stood and waved goodbye, Rex followed his family, tail high and confident. Mark and Sarah knew that the dog's heroism was no longer hidden. The story of Rex's past had come full circle, revealing why he had always been more than just a pet. The sun dipped low over the horizon, casting long golden streaks across the yard. Emily ran barefoot through the grass, laughing, her small hands reaching toward Rex as he raced beside her. His powerful legs moved in perfect rhythm with hers, ears flapping gently, tail high in joyous abandon. Every so often he'd glance at her, eyes soft, ensuring she was safe. Mark and Sarah stood on the porch, arms wrapped around each other, hearts full. They watched the scene unfold like a living painting, the culmination of fear, courage, and trust now blossoming into something warm and unbreakable. It was more than just a moment. It was a bond sealed by shared experience, heroism, and love. Emily stopped abruptly, turning to Rex. "You're my best friend forever," she whispered. She pressed her cheek against his thick fur, her hands clutching him tightly. Rex exhaled softly, letting out a low, comforting whine as he nuzzled her in return. It was a gesture that spoke volumes. Loyalty, protection, and unwavering devotion, all wrapped into one living presence. Mark stepped down from the porch, brushing a hand over Rex's back. "We've learned something today," he said quietly. "Trust isn't given, it's earned, and Rex has earned ours 1,000 times over." Sarah knelt beside them, resting her hand on Emily's shoulder. "And he's taught us that courage comes in many forms," she added. "Sometimes it's loud, sometimes quiet, but it always protects the ones you love." Rex lifted his head, amber eyes reflecting the fading sunlight. For a brief moment, he seemed to understand the weight of the words, the importance of the lives he had safeguarded. His gaze shifted to Emily, then to Mark and Sarah, a silent promise of devotion etched into every muscle, every breath. Emily giggled, tugging at his collar. "Come on, Rex. Let's go play some more." The dog bounded forward, powerful and graceful, while Emily sprinted after him, laughter mingling with the rustle of leaves and the distant hum of the evening breeze. Mark and Sarah exchanged a glance, smiles wide and eyes shining. The trials of the past weeks, the uncertainty, the fear, had led them here, not just to safety but to understanding, to a family strengthened by trust and love. As the sun sank below the horizon, the sky painted in oranges and pinks, Rex lay beside Emily, head resting lightly on her lap. They were home, safe, together, and in that quiet, perfect moment, the family realized that some bonds, like the one between a child and a loyal dog, were unbreakable, timeless and unforgettable. The story closed with a soft whisper of the wind, A reminder that heroes sometimes come on four legs, hearts brimming with courage, ready to protect the ones we love most.